United Video Game Workers CWA fires back at the Saudi Arabia deal that happened earlier this month for $55 billion. Shout out to PC Gamer for this article. It sounds like they've been staying connected with the EA devs, maybe some former ones, as well as the union workers on what's happening and what's to come. So there are a few things I want to touch on before I really hit the article, and I feel like this is a problem that needs to be addressed across the globe, and that's us getting distracted. And maybe I'm paranoid, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but the timing of the deal being announced was a little weird, right? Because I'm sure this has been in the works for a while, and they chose to announce it at the beginning of October, the same month that Battlefield comes out. I think they knew there was gonna be backlash because this is a big deal. This is a lot of the gaming industry being consumed by Saudi Arabia, which I talked about in other videos, how they own about 40% of the esports scene, which is a whole nother issue in itself. But my point is that I think they knew there was gonna be backlash, so they plugged it in at the beginning of the month, right? So people will be outraged, and then Battlefield 6 comes in, huge success, everybody's loving Battlefield, and no one is talking about the deal anymore. No one cares about that. They got their Battlefield 6, they're happy, and another big thing just gets swept under the rug. And I think it's important that we have to stay locked in and appreciate things as they come along, but not forget the bigger picture and keep our eyes on big things like this. The second thing I want to hit on is that it sounds like a Red Lobster's bankruptcy situation. And if you're outside the States, Red Lobster's is a chain, seafood chain in America. And what happened was that company was bought by an entity. It was called RL Investor Holdings. And there was a group of people behind them that backed this purchase. And essentially this entity, this group, firm, whatever you want to call it, they bought Red Lobster's. And what they did was they took all the land that Red Lobster's owned, because all the restaurants own the land that they operate on, meaning they don't pay a monthly fee to anybody for property or anything like that. So that saves them a lot of money. They took that land and said, hey, we're going to charge you for that land now. And they made the rent so high, or the lease for the land so high, that the restaurants weren't able to really pay it, thus pushing them into a bankruptcy status. And for them, it doesn't matter if Red Lobster shuts down, because they own the land. They don't care about the restaurant. Now they can put other stuff there. So to tie that back into EA, now this is not the exact one-to-one, but EA doesn't have restaurants everywhere, but EA owns a lot of studios. So you could imagine that the firm could try to take those studios and say, hey, now you need to pay us money to work in the studio. And if you can't, we'll find someone who can do the work you want. Do you see how that could be a problem? Not a very business friendly adventure, because they could just kick the devs out or whoever, and then they could just put like a Walmart or like some kind of store on that land. As long as they own the land, they're going to make money, and that's not good for the developers. The second thing I want to talk about is that EA picked up $20 billion in debt securing this $55 billion deal. So I don't know if the story is being told untruthfully, where they really made $35 billion, but they did some kind of trade amongst the way, and it's just not being, told truthfully, or the CEO and maybe a handful of people at the top really did make $55 billion, and the $20 billion that they picked up in like some kind of side separate deal is going to be pushed onto the EA, and then all the studios got to figure out how to make that money back. That's how I would take it. I doubt the CEO would want to give up $20 billion. That just makes the most sense to me, but correct me if I'm wrong. Now, I already talked about the red flags of like leasing the space back to the studios, which is a very real possibility. But another thing that also is somewhat alarming to me, and I might be a little biased, is that I've seen some other articles, specifically PC Gamer brought a good point up, is that Wall Street investors are looking into mobile gaming. So like worst case scenario, we lose, a lot of studios get shut down, and the rest of EA turns into like a mobile gaming company where all they do is mobile gaming. The same way how Konami stepped away from the beautiful franchise that was Metal Gear and decided to focus on mobile gaming instead, because it seemed like a major cash cow. And now they're kind of coming back to gaming because mobile gaming is not working out for them. And then ultimately they might shut down. They might not. Konami's situation is different than EA's, but EA could be going down the path where it doesn't work out when they get pushed into mobile gaming. I don't know, but that's just like the worst case scenario to me, that we lose a lot of studios and we're left with the shell of a company that now does mobile gaming. Last but not least, and I feel like this, if you don't take away anything else from this video, especially if you made it this far, and I think this is very important, is that the United Video Game Workers are calling for action. They're calling on regulators and lawmakers to ensure that their jobs are protected for them, as well as any other studio company who goes through this kind of situation. And I feel like, and I'm not dogging them out, but a lot of issues are happening right now around the world, and we're all calling for action, right? But like, what's the plan of action? You can say, man, somebody needs to do something about this, and I'm not dogging them again, because maybe they are taking the steps. But in general, I know a lot of people out there, especially on social media, are not taking the steps. But what are the steps that we need to take? What are the things we need to do to make sure that stuff like this doesn't happen in the future, because anyone can say, oh, this should be taken care of. But if everybody owns it, then nobody owns it. So like if you're just saying, hey, this needs to be addressed, or everyone's going to watch bystander effect and everyone's going to watch to see someone does something, nobody does anything, and then it becomes cemented. So like that's my big thing here. So hopefully, this United Video Games Workers Union is taking the steps to protect themselves, EA, future developers. Hopefully there's some kind of plan of action. Hopefully there's steps they can take. EA is a fairly big company. I don't know how many assets they have left after the deal, but hopefully they have a leg or two to stand on to kind of fight this fight, because if all they're saying is, hey, this isn't right, we don't feel safe, if that's all, if you're just verbalizing that and you're not doing anything about it, then chances are you will be heading down a path of the Red Lobster bankruptcy, which I don't want that for them. But words, like actions speak louder than words at the end of the day. But that's all I had. A lot of heavy topics, very important things to talk about, think about. If you enjoyed this kind of content, hit that follow, hit that sub button for me. Definitely want to hear from you what your thoughts are on the situation. And y'all stay safe. Peace.